Hi, welcome to the June 2021 HIL Summit. We're really excited to give you this opportunity to participate asynchronously, and we are very hopeful that these materials will provide great quality learning for you today, as well as a resource for you to return to and obtain information from as you continue on your HIL journey. So first things first, I'd like to introduce myself. I think I know very many of you, but there are probably a few who I'm not familiar with or who are not familiar with me. So my name is Diane Talo, and I work for the St. Joseph County ISD. I am the Director of Instructional Leadership, which means everything general education. And I am also lucky enough to be a HIL coordinator and have been for the past 4 years. I've been in education for about 38 years, and I have served in every role from parapro to principal, from curriculum director, and now as an ISD support for all of our local districts and as a member of the HIL coordinating team. The objective of today is to help you gain an understanding of how using the MICIP platform is actually a high quality support for your HIL literacy initiatives. Often we see school improvement, or the term now is continuous improvement efforts, as duplicative, or in some cases actually the opposite of the work that we are trying to accomplish. But we want to help you understand how the MICIP platform was developed in a way that completely supports the school renewal process of the HIL project. So we really want you to not have to duplicate your efforts and do HIL work over here and continuous improvement work over here. We really want that hard work to make a difference and to help you understand how to utilize the MICIP platform to make your hard work pay off. So this is, as I said previously, part of the asynchronous materials. What is beneficial here is that your facilitator will be working with you today, but you may have access to this on opportunities when your facilitator is not with you and you'd like to review the learning, or maybe a member of your team was not here. But just know that this will be available to you in the future, and you can use this in any way you see appropriate. You will have access to the HIL YouTube channel, so you can find this presentation, the accompanying resources, and all of the other presentations that have been prepared for this summit. So there are 3 products that I want to talk to you about. The MICIP platform, which I'm sure you've all heard about. The HIL school renewal work, which you are deeply engaged in right now and will continue to be for at least another year, we hope longer. And a third product that I'll refer to but won't spend a lot of time on, which is the strategy bank. And just so that you have a visual image, the strategy bank lives over here, and your MICIP work lives over here. And information in the strategy bank is actually fed into MICIP based on which strategies you choose. So you actually have to work in both of those platforms, MICIP and the strategy bank, and you can use the HIL work to go into the MICIP platform. This is renewal work, and they are both designed with the same high quality research on implementation science and on continuous renewal. So you will see many of the same phrases, sometimes different vocabulary, sometimes different tools, but in essence, the renewal cycle is the same in both MICIP and the HIL project. So we're going to look for that happy intersection in the Venn diagram of these 3 products: MICIP, the HIL phases, and my strategy bank. I've provided a note-taking tool for you. You can find it in the linked resources, or you can just click on this link in your presentation. Hopefully you're following along as well. And I would love it if you either access that electronically, make a copy, you can type right on it in your computers, or you can print that out and have it available for you to utilize as you go through this presentation. So to remind you, it's the practices we're trying to implement. Programs support the practices, and where evidence can demonstrate this is research-based. And what's important is that where research cannot support that, adaptations may be needed to be considered. So as we talk about strategies and evidence-based practices, you may also want to keep in mind what is the context of your building, what is the context of your environment, what are the things that are different about your school that will cause you to think deeply about how we might make those strategies really the strategies and the activities that make it special to our school, but continue to maintain the fidelity with the research. So very briefly, MICIP was developed for many reasons, one of which was the platform that we had previously used, which was called Assist, was sunsetting, and Cognia was moving to a new platform. So as long as Michiganders were going to have to learn a new platform, we thought it would be wise for us to design our own that was specific to our need and that had more tools embedded to support implementation. We found that traditionally school improvement was a very isolated process. Schools did it independently. Sometimes it was a principal in a room by themselves who worked on that. And it didn't tend to permeate the school and become a way of doing business. We often missed systems, and we didn't use funding well with the previous processes. And it really tended to be more about compliance than about needs. So we wanted to develop a product that had better footing in a continuous process, not just a September to May and then you start over next year, but that it was this ongoing multi-year plan that included many, many, many small cycles of renewal. That we embedded it with systems thinking in the design and in the implementation, and that it provided opportunity to address equity. We wanted to make sure the whole child was integrated into this, not just academics or just some kind of social emotional behavioral thing, but that it was really about building a system and a plan that incorporated evidence from our whole child data and gave us the opportunity to address any part of a student's need. We also think that this tool streamlines your data and gives you access right inside the platform to other tools. And it helps us focus on both our assets and our needs. Traditional school improvement is really embedded in a deficit model, and the MICIP platform was designed to be utilized as an asset-based model. So if you're familiar with the HIL project, you can already start to see some of the connections with how HIL does business and how the new MICIP platform is designed in the same manner. So some of the things that are embedded are the comprehensive needs assessment, connections to the consolidated app. That doesn't have to be done in a separate location. There's a lot of pre-populated data that you can draw down into the models. So when it's time to do what in HIL we call a school profile, or it's time to look at new data when you're evaluating the success of a strategy, then there are places you can go to draw that data down rather than have to create it yourself or make up graphs based on a bunch of hand tabulated data. We also know that it embeds the program evaluation process, and in the HIL model, that's really the phase 5, where you're evaluating the system that you implemented and seeing if it was actually effective. It integrates resources and data, and our hope is that it reduces duplication. So we're going to look at the MICIP platform. We'll look first at assessing needs. the data story, the root cause, challenge and goal setting, then move on to planning, implementing, monitoring, evaluating. After we look at each one of these chunks, I'm going to pause for a moment and have you answer the questions that are in the note-taking device. And my hope is that you will, I will point out some of the ways that the programs complement each other, but I would hope that you will also be paying attention so that you can identify some things that I don't necessarily point out explicitly. So we're going to start with assessing needs and look at data stories, root cause analysis, the challenge statement, and goal setting. I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint right now, or the Google information, and we're going to move over to the MICIP platform. Thanks for your patience. We will actually be flipping back and forth between both programs, so I would just ask that you have a little patience while we're moving around in both systems. It gets tricky when you're trying to share, obviously, you know that. So we're in the very beginning portion of MICIP, and MICIP begins with asking us to discover our data. So it asks us to explore and group data, learner outcomes, and systems for us to investigate. And then it asks us to analyze that data and look at the root cause and discover some of the issues that we're currently presented with. So I would just suggest that you think a little bit as we move through the questions about how this supports your HIL work and how they're connected. So when we first go into MICIP, it gives us the opportunity to begin to collect different sets of data that might be available to us. We can collect academic, non-academic, and systems data, and hopefully you're collecting all three. This may sound familiar to you. My hope is that when you did the student or the school profile, you actually gathered a variety of evidence to help you target in on your student growth targets, and that many of you may have done that electronically, or you may have created a board with that information on it. MICIP actually can serve to be the repository for all of that collected data, and you can keep it all in one space so that as subsequent years roll on, you have an easy place to go back and review. You also have the opportunity to make sure that that information lives there, so that if we get a new principal or a new school improvement leader, that information is available to them. So I'm going to move us into a pretend plan that I've created. It doesn't have a lot of information in it. It just lets us move through the pages of MICIP. So in this section, we would create a custom data set. And what that means is we would go in and select a variety of pieces of data. We would name them, and we would gather them together as individual items so that we could look at them all at once and help them and let them help us make good decisions about where we need to spend energy around growth. So if I were to finish this page, I would move on to the opportunity to actually analyze our data. So we'd be looking at the individual data objects. You can get data in here two ways. You can go out through a pinhole to My School Data and bring information in. And you could also upload your own data. So for example, if you were using data like STAR or maybe a parent perception data, you can just simply click here and move that in as an object, as a PDF. So once we've got all of our data together, we would go on to analyze. And what that means is we're going to investigate a root cause analysis. And there are a couple of different tools embedded in here. We can look at our district data story and look at a root cause analysis through the 5 whys or a fishbone activity. But it also says you can add your own tool. And the tool that exists in the HIL model is the SOAR analysis. There's also a couple of activities that you may have done with your facilitator about an existing state and a desired state. So those are some of the tools that you might choose to upload in this section. Once you have deep discussion about those items, it'll ask you to create a summary. And this doesn't have to be a dissertation. This is really just a documentation or a summarization of the conversation that the team held about what this data is informing you about. And then you can add any documents that support that. And then those would go back and be added to the district story. So the next thing we're going to do is actually define our challenge statement. So in the HIL project, we really like to look more deeply at our assets and our strengths. So at this point, we would probably encourage you to go back to the SOAR analysis and really look at what are our aspirations? What are we hoping to accomplish with our students? What are our strengths? What are the assets we have in place to build on to create the desired change? So again, you would just summarize that information here. And then move on to defining a goal. So we call our goals priority student growth targets. And you can make them broad or you can make them extremely narrow and pinpointed at a very specific part of your literacy improvement plan. But know that you can have a lot of goals. We really would encourage you to just focus on one. Do one goal and do it well. So you would describe what that is. You would name your goal, and then you would come up with some end targets. Now notice over here, there's a place to add some dates, and you would go ahead and add a measure. And in this window, we're allowed to set dates. So we would go in here and say we want to have either a quantitative measure or a qualitative measure. You can go either direction. And you can increase something. We want to increase phonological awareness, or we want to decrease downtime between the stations in daily 5. And you have the opportunity to select goals or due dates for your measures, and be very clear. These dates can go out ad infinitum. So for example, we really want this to be a 3 to 5 year plan. So if you're hoping to improve reading achievement, that might be a 4 or 5 year goal, but some of your other targets might be smaller chunks of that. So I might go in here and then I would just move through and select whatever I wanted. So then we can go in and add interim targets. Sorry, same window, and put interim measures in place. We would want to go ahead and create things like at the end of the 6-week marking period, we're going to increase our stamina for independent reading. And so those can be shorter interim targets as you're looking to build a robust literacy initiative. And then finally, you would go into the next window and you would begin to select strategies. So I want to take us back to our PowerPoint. And give you all a moment to stop and think and do some conversation. So if you have your note-taking tool, you know that we're starting with positive core. So when I say pause, you can go ahead and pause the recording and talk about this question together and document on the note-taking tool. How might the HIL principle of using the positive core fit into this continuous improvement conversation or model supported by the MICIP platform? So as you're going through the MICIP platform, where do you see the intersection between the positive core and this good HIL work? And think about the specific practices growth mindset, strengths-based, appreciative lens. Where do you see those things appearing in MICIP, or where can you capture them? So please feel free to push pause now and have your conversation. So I'm hoping you had a really robust conversation and that you were able to think about where we see the positive core already embedded in the MICIP process and how that matches up between our school improvement work and our HIL project. So next we're going to talk about our planning portion of MICIP, strategies to achieve goals and implementation planning. In the HIL project, which is one of the reasons why I believe it's so successful, we are actually giving you many, many tools to support implementation. A lot of times with school improvement, everybody got a good idea and then we said, now just go do it. But there was very little detail around planning how that was going to happen and how we were going to actually monitor and evaluate our practices. So I'm going to go back to MICIP again. And we're going to look a little bit about our implementation plan. So what you're seeing are two things. We are planning our implementation, and then we are delivering our implementation plan. So our hope is that you and your HIL team are spending good time, good quality time, talking about, and how are we going to make this happen? Who's going to do what part? Who's going to be responsible for contacting the publisher and getting a representative from the company out here to tell us how to use this resource? Who's going to plan the professional learning opportunity? Who's going to make the agenda for the PLC? We want you to be that specific. And when you are designing your gold standard implementation guide, we want that to be your blueprint for how your teachers, your parapros, your principals are all going to support the work around what teachers are doing in their classroom to make a difference in the student growth target. So if you are able to spend good quality time planning your implementation and documenting that, then implementing your plan should be a much easier prospect. So when we go to create a strategy, there are a couple I've put in here to begin with. We would go out to the My Strategy Bank to help us find an evidence-based strategy. Now, I told you a little bit about this third thing. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but just understand My Strategy Bank lives out here and it feeds into MICIP. So the only way you can get a strategy into MICIP is to go to the strategy bank and draw it down. So already there are the literacy essentials, and what you may want to go in then is include some of your HIL strategies or have someone do that for you. And know that your HIL team is working on getting many of the HIL portions and the HIL research-based practices into the strategy bank for you. So you may choose to put in one or two this year, but in subsequent years, you will be able to go in and draw them down. So I would go in and select a specific strategy. It tells me about the strategy and I decide, yep, I think I'm going to look at that one. So it adds it to my choices of what I'm going to look at. And then I can define my strategy implementation. And what that means is I would go in here and I would tell it who owns this implementation. Is it the ISD? Is it the district? Is it the building? Is it the reading specialist? When will it start and when will it end? And we really do not want to stay invested in those September to May plans. We really want to go way out and look at a 3- and 5-year plan with lots of little interim objectives that you're hoping to accomplish. And then you would go in and begin to add your activities. So what are the things that need to be done that will help us make our strategy occur. So do teachers need training? Do materials need to be purchased? Do we need to communicate to parents? What do we want to do for our incentives? How do we want to organize our whole school around reading? So these are all things you would add in as separate activities, and you can indicate where they're funded from. So you probably want your finance person sitting here too. And then how are you going to communicate this strategy? So you could get all the way down here and say, you know what, we don't have the resources to do this strategy, so we're probably not going to do this one. We're going to have to look at some others. So you can remove that strategy and then go look deeply at another one, and you can update your plan in the portfolio. So we've gone through discover, plan, and we're preparing to implement. So this gives us the opportunity to look at our strategy and tell us, is it on target? Are we behind? Did we say we were going to do that in November and it's December already? It will actually give you reminders that this is due, or you are behind your due date. And it'll give you the opportunity to add your interim measures. And if you don't have any for the specific activity, then it'll just look grayed out. And when is it supposed to end? So if you are marking your interim measures, you might have 1, you might have 20. It will tell you if you are making good progress towards your evaluation end measure. So we're going to go back to our presentation. And look at this page. Has some information about my strategy bank and how strategies are rated. So the HIL project is very invested in making sure that you choose evidence-based strategies and then ensuring that we are delivering that with fidelity in every classroom. We don't want to stray too far from the evidence. So the ESSA tiers of evidence help you understand if a strategy is good for your school or not. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time here, but just know there's actually a super cool video that you can watch. It's about 5 minutes long that gives you a shorthand version of what are the ESSA levels and how can they assist you in selecting very high quality evidence-based practices and strategies. At this point, I'd like you to pause again, and we are going to look at the next part of the note-taking tool, evidence-based decisions. Where do these components appear throughout the MICIP platform? So where have I already shown you necessity for collaborative inquiry, performance profiling, progress monitoring, looking at leading and lagging indicators? And then speak briefly about how can the MICIP tool help you implement and succeed your HIL literacy plan? What tools are you seeing in that platform that are actually going to be beneficial to you? So we'll go ahead and pause momentarily, and we'll welcome you back when you are ready. So I hope that you were able to identify each of the things that I shared with you, but better than that, I hope you were able to also think about some ideas that you're seeing that you can find benefit from. So finally, we're going to talk about implementing, monitoring, and evaluating. One of the critical aspects of the HIL project is the investment and time in monitoring your activities. We spend a tremendous amount of time developing that gold standard implementation guide so that you'll know what to measure. If we, in that guide, say teachers will do this 3 times a week, paras will support in this way, the principal is going to do these things, walkthroughs, whatever. Those are each of those things in the gold standard guide needs to be monitored and accounted for. And at some point, it all needs to be evaluated so that you can say, one, are we making progress on our implementation? And eventually, are we actually seeing the outcomes in student performance that we were hoping to achieve? And if you are walking through each part of the MICIP process, you will actually see the places where those are embedded in the platform, and then they will automatically be available to you through the HIL model. So let's take another pause and go back to our note-taking tool. Now we're going to look at, where is collective ownership visible in MICIP? In what part are we seeing distributed leadership, shared responsibility, social trust, and interdependence? So the prompt is, successful continuous improvement teams use these 4 HIL collective ownership practices throughout the entire improvement process. So it's not just done at the beginning, it's not just done at the end. How are these practices critical during the data story component of MICIP? How is collective ownership beneficial and necessary when you are doing your student profile, your school profile? In addition, what ways might these be important in the implementation and monitoring phase? How can you utilize collective ownership to maximize implementation and monitoring? If it's always, the 2 teachers who are always the busiest, or it's always the principal's name that are attached to these implementation monitoring plans, what we've seen in practical application is it doesn't really happen. We overload folks and they can't do that job. But if we have shared responsibility, 1, everybody owns the initiative, and 2, you're much more likely to accomplish your goals. And finally, what other connections are you seeing? Are there more connections that you are taking note of? Are there other items that you are seeing in MICIP where we can utilize our HIL principles and practices to support MICIP, and where can MICIP support our HIL work? So let's take another pause, and I will see you back here. So at the end of this today, you'll do some reflective questions, and I'll be very anxious to read your responses, because I want to know how many connections you're making and what you're seeing maybe that I have not even observed myself. So here are some very specific examples of HIL and MICIP. My hope is that you've already identified several of these. We've talked about, where does the SOAR analysis fit? Where does our gold standard implementation guide fit? How are the literacy essentials addressed? And how does the focus on evidence-based strategies fit into both programs or platforms? And how are we seeing monitoring implementation be such a strong component of HIL, and really be new to the continuous improvement process in the MICIP platform? And why is there so much devoted in MICIP to monitoring implementation? And then, of course, multiple cycles of renewal. So we're seeing many of these HIL components embedded in MICIP. Let's take another pause and look at organizational learning. So by the time we get to the part of MICIP where we're evaluating whether or not our strategies worked, whether or not we had the impact on student success, we are engaging in organizational learning by thinking deeply about the work we've conducted and engaging in double loop questioning, always asking ourselves why. Why does this happen? Why are we not achieving success? Why is this classroom tremendously successful? We are engaging in double loop questioning. And of course, thinking about our systems and how things are aligned, and deepening our levels of learning. So how might the principle of organizational learning, these practices here, and the associated practices be essential to monitoring and evaluating stage? So how do these 2 programs support each other? How might your school be demonstrating these practices in both literacy efforts and continuous improvement? Where do you see your teams in their HIL work and in their school improvement work engaging in reflective practices, double loop questioning, and deepening their levels of learning? So let's take pause and go ahead and engage in the conversation and take some notes. So my hope is that you are making connections between these three systems and thinking about how can your HIL team use MICIP to its fullest potential to make your HIL work more effective and help you stay on track with things that you are planning and delegating and wanting to see all that work pay off. And then my next and final question would be, what might you need for your next steps? Are there MICIP supports you might need from your ISD? Are there literacy coach supports that could help you make connections between your HIL initiative and your continuous improvement planning? Are there things your facilitator can support? And most specifically, if I can be of any assistance to you, please know that you can reach out to me. Your HIL facilitator certainly knows how to get a hold of me, but my email address is here. My phone number is there. You are welcome to send me a text and say, hey, I need to talk with you. Please let me know who you are and why you're sending the text. And I will be more than happy to respond, answer questions, engage in any conversation that will support your deepening of understanding about how HIL and MICIP work together to help you achieve your success. I hope you enjoyed this opportunity today, and I really do look forward to reading your answers to the reflective questions. It will help me learn more about how I can help you. Have a great rest of the summit, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Take care.